Go ahead, Amy.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone watching, and to Rafa and Robin. We are here with Leapwing Audio Talks, and today's guest it's the maestro Rafa Sardina. Hi, Rafa. How are you?
Hey
Hola.
guys, how are you doing? Good to see you
Hey,
guys.
good to see you.
For those who do not know Rafa, Rafa is an Los Angeles-based 15-time Grammy and Latin Grammy winner. He has basically worked with everyone from Michael Jackson to Stevie Wonder to Lady Gaga, and he's an amazing producer, engineer. He's an amazing person. He's an amazing friend, and he's as well like a wine connoisseur. So we're gonna just chat about a lot of different things. We basically both share that we are both from the north of Spain, different regions, but kind of the north area where it's cold and rainy, but food is great. So with no further ado, welcome, Rafa. How you doing, man?
Hello guys, how are you doing? Great to be here. Yeah, and you're right. The northern side, we have a lot of rain, we have cold weather, whatnot, but yeah, great wine and great food.
Exactly. That's all you need, you know.
Yes.
Great stuff. Today we want to go a bit left side to the regular audio or music related topic, which I think you might find interesting. At least we find it very interesting and insightful in these times and in any other times. We're just gonna talk about mindset and work ethic, running your businesses, running basically different business at the same time, having a set of goals and systems, and as well a routine to I don't want to say be successful, but be the best version that you can be, and be the best version of yourself. Because success means different things for a lot of different people. But I think if you can tap into your own energy for create the best version and be the happiest you can be, I think that's could be one of the best goals to set for this and upcoming years. So that's kind of the point we're gonna talk. I want to start. This 1 hour talk, we're gonna mostly be for like an hour and 10 minutes if we have a lot of questions. But as well, if anyone has any questions, there is a chat box that you can write your questions in, and whenever we find the time to it, we'll get Rafa to answer your question for you. And I hope this is interesting and dynamic. So my first question, and to open this conversation, I would like to ask Rafa, like, what are your what's your mindset and your thoughts in the current situation, in regard of your own businesses and in regards of the entire economic and land and current landscape in the world? How are you seeing that, and what's your reaction towards it?
Well, you already tap into a couple of important things by just asking the question. You mentioned the fact that we need to have routines, and that has always been a big part of of my personal journey, my personal success too. As you mentioned, how do you weight success? Is different for every person, and everybody has different needs, so it does need to work for you. And I have encountered these endless times where people actually claim that they want to be this or they want to be that, without realizing that's not their cup of tea either. They don't realize that's not really what they need, or is for you or not. But in order to achieve the maximum, achieve the maximum return from your effort, I think that routine is super, super important. You have to have your own methods, and it has to be methodical. It cannot just be, and that's what having a routine means, but it has to be methodical even in the way you evaluate your results. I always split, because I work in many, many different areas, and not just in music, even in other businesses that I have. I split my time based on priorities and based even on my own energy. For example, if I have to work today on a mix, but I also have to work something having to do with some of my other businesses that are not related to a creative aspect of me, working on a track or a piece of music, but it has to do with putting together a business plan or doing accounting for something, or I have to do projections for the accounting for a new project, for a new production. I split my day and I based it on two things: my own personal energy, what time of the day will be the best for me to tap into that project and get into that project, and then prioritizing in time what's going to be the consequence of me not doing that today. Is it going to delay the possible approval of an upcoming project? Even the project is not going to happen for another 3 months, but maybe the approval of the project is so critical in order for me to actually win that project, be part of that project. So, and all of this you have to put on paper. You cannot just paper. When I say paper, I mean like even on your computer, your calendar, or whatever. You cannot just rely on your own memory or thinking that, oh, I'll remember all of these things. You have to actually put it on paper, and the night before set a strategy for the following day and go like, okay, this is what I'm up against the following day. These are my targets. This is what needs to be done. This is what needs to be resolved. Okay, I'm going to finish this mix, or I'm going to try to finish this mix. In the creative side, you never know how things are going to go, and you never know if you're going to be able to finish or not, but at least you're going to dedicate a big portion of the day to accomplish that. And then the rest of the things, you set a timetable with times of the day when you're going to tackle those other things.
That's I just writing down notes as well for myself, because I find this topic very interesting for at least for myself. And what time of your life you started realizing that you needed to develop routines? Is that something that came up naturally, something you learned from family, parents, environment, or that it wasn't forced the moment you started working in LA and the moment you basically did the move to the US?
It started the moment I became freelance. And back in the day, if you became freelance, I became freelance like early on. In my first 2 years, I was already a freelance engineer, not producer, even though I was producing some stuff, but it was, minor, small, independent projects. But the moment I became an independent freelance engineer,
which, sorry to interrupt, but how long did it take from you to go from starting at Ocean Way to become a freelance engineer?
I got my first gigs within a year. So,
that is crazy.
But it is. I will also say, there is a luck factor too. I mean, you have to cross paths with the right people too, and people who you have synergy with, and people who really appreciate the way your demeanor, the way you conduct a session, and the way you become part of the project. Yeah. So because you become part of a small family every time you sign into a project, you're part of that family, and you move from family to family. So you have to be a very adaptable person. You have to be someone who has not only the demeanor but has the empathy towards those people's needs. And one day you might be working with somebody who has an A personality, and the following day you're working with somebody who has a D personality, and conduct themselves in very, very different ways. You have to know how to fit, but you also have to know how to make sure your personality is part of the project. Because if you don't actually click and fit into the family, you're eventually gonna be kicked out. You know what I mean? You might be able to survive that experience, but they're not gonna call you back. And the key of the success in this business is repeated business, people coming back to you year after year, even 10 years later, even if they don't call you for 5 years or 7 years, but they eventually come back, and it not only has to do with the artistic skills that you have, it has to do a lot with how you make everybody feel during the session, what kind of ambience you create by your persona being there, and how you steer the session and whatnot. So, and you were asking actually how long it took me to become freelance, and how important it was, when did it actually click for me to be
and how do you develop that
routine? Yeah, it happened when I was still a rookie, very young, getting started, but working with actually great artists, great acts, with a lot of pressure, and feeling that pressure, and knowing that I couldn't fuck it up, knowing that if I had like 3 sessions in a week with different artists, or if I had to make the time during another big artist, booking. Sometimes bookings could be months long, but if you need to make if you needed to free a weekend to work on this other project, you need to be like super organized in order for things to work out for yourself, not even for your clients, for yourself. So you could, get things done, be able to free those days with no excuses for anybody. Those are mine. I can work on this other project. And in order to do that, you need to be organized. You need to be able to have those routines. You need to be able to evaluate what things need to happen during the week. You have like weekly targets, you have daily targets, and then you have monthly and long-term targets. So you have to work on all of them all the time. You cannot just work on the immediate every day, and then all of a sudden, you realize in 2 weeks' time that you really messed up, that something didn't happen that needed to happen in order to get to move forward with another project. So those kind of things. And this applies also even for the technical side of things. If you are going to be working on sessions on other studios that you don't have experience with, you have to prepare. You have to do advanced calls and email chains with different people, so you're going to have the right gear, the right musicians, the right backline for the musicians. So many different aspects. So you always need to be on top of all of these things in order to be successful at the end, right? It will be really, really helpful if you book a string date in a unknown studio, and it's a very fragile situation, and you don't even get the microphones that you need, right? Not only the acoustics are maybe poor or not great, but you don't even get the right microphones, and you don't get the right gobos, or you don't have blankets, and you need the blankets to create, barriers between the French horns and this, and it's like, oh God. And the day of the session, there's nothing you can do about it. So you anticipate what's to happen.
Man, this is great. Robin has a question, I think.
Yeah, well, that's great advice, and amazing. I had like a kind of a follow-up question more towards your kind of routine. Like for me, like, I think like energy is obviously very important, and you're dealing also with one where if you're in a session, it requires your full attention. And how do you keep, because I also don't know anybody who works more than I think you do. I know, like, sometimes I get text message from you where it says it must be like 4 a.m. for you, and I don't know how you do it, but how do you keep that energy level? Also, like you said, you have a lot of other things to deal with, even, Grammy meetings with these people, setting up projects, your businesses. How do you maintain that level of energy, especially if your day is like 14, 15 hours at least?
Yeah, and that's a good point. When you're working long days, you learn not to do things when you are not supposed to do them. For example, I'll never book a mix session at the end of a day. Do you know what I mean? If I have been, like, really working super hard and in depth on something that really drained me, and that does happen. That's happened, and that's why also, I always have like A, B, C, D things to do in my list. For example, if I'm mixing and it gets to a point where I do really feel I'm tired or I'm not inspired. I get to a point where I really feel exhausted, tired about this. Maybe I start working on something else. Maybe it's time to switch. Flip the page and get into, okay, let me figure out the setup for this session that's going to happen on next week's Wednesday. Let me set up this session. How are we going to do this? Okay, we're going to be in a studio A at United, and we're going to do this, and it's 5 music. You start working on other things, and you get that done, and then you go like, okay, how do I feel? Do I have the energy to go back to the mix or not? You play by ear, but you always have things to do. And ultimately, if I'm not to get back to the mix, maybe I work on something else, vocal comping, something that, it's a different mindset, it's a different type of creativity, and maybe I'm good for that. So I just do it, but I never drain myself to the point where I'm not. Actually, I hate that idea, and I did that in the past when I was younger. I have a lot of energy, that's why I can do it, but it doesn't mean that you are supposed to do that. And there's also ear fatigue. Even if you don't play super loud in the studio, there's ear fatigue, and there is mental fatigue. It gets to a point where you are not good to make good decisions.
I think you touched such an important topic, which is at the end is knowing yourself better.
Because absolutely. You need to know yourself. Yeah, pretty good.
The mistake, I mean, it's mistake. I think it's life, like you were saying. Like when I started and when I was, especially remember working in New York and in Belgium, I would work all the time, every time, as long as I would be awake, because that was kind of what required, But then when I started myself being freelance and having other things to do, that concept of I have to take care of myself didn't cross my mind at the beginning. So I really went the other way, and I was such a learning process to understand. Okay, first myself in order to be able to do anything else.
Mm-hmm. No, so, of course, you also have deadlines, deliveries, things that you have to comply to. You always have to keep those in mind. That's why when I was talking about having a routine, deadlines always come first, obviously, because you have to be able to deliver. Yeah. And sometimes there are other circumstances. For example, now what's happening with this whole pandemic, and things don't go the way you want. For example, if there is a project now that I have delivered some mixes for, and I have had some technical issues in the studio, and because of this full isolation, I couldn't get the tech to be able to fix a couple of things so I can print the final mixes. Doesn't mean that I'm not doing other things. Of course, I'm continuing, for example, with vocal comps on that same project, but I'm not still finalizing the final mixes of it. Right. I'm playing by ear and trying to buy time, but I'm doing it by not wasting time. I'm actually equally advancing on a different aspect of the project. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it does happen. And even the technical issues, the technical difficulties and whatnot do happen all the time. So you need to have, as I mentioned, like several things that are equally important on the table in order for you to advance on either one of them. Yeah. And that way you are actually very fruitful. You are always, really moving forward, and you are actually eventually, you are also delivering, which is the important thing, right? Yeah. As soon as I have this result, for example, I'm going to be popping out mixes like crazy. I have like 14 different mixes of different things that I really need to deliver. Yeah. Obviously, it's not like a matter of life or death in this environment, because of the pandemic, but it is important that I deliver them. So, yeah, you have to know yourself. You have to know your deadlines, especially, and then you have to know your possibilities, and yeah, play that way. Yeah.
I think that's great stuff, and I hope the audience enjoys it. We have a few questions already. For example, I see our friend John Crivet.
Mhm.
Hey John, how are you doing?
Hey, John.
His question is, and Rafa, you see it in the screen, I think. Rafa, we have many students from Latin America on Hey the Students Facebook group. They want to know how you have been so successful in the US. Any advice for them?
And I love how he closes the question. Here's the thing: I don't think that matters. In reality, I'll be honest. Um, we have to. The way I was successful was by exactly doing what's very key, even in this environment. Get rid of preconceptions. I think you have to not assume anything, and not let anybody assume anything about you, right? Early on, the kind of work I was doing wasn't actually Latin work at all. During my first 10 years, that wasn't my market. I was doing almost exclusively American, projects, or worldwide, world music projects from around the world. They need to feel that you're up to the task. They need to feel that you are not, that you, for starters, that you don't consider yourself to be niche market. The same when you approach a new style of music you have never actually been known for working at. The first time they called me for a hip hop project, they they didn't know how how good I would be exactly, but they knew I was an accomplished guy at doing other things. They knew I was up to the task. They knew I don't know. You need to you need to exude that confidence, and let people know that you're up to the task, that you can actually do it. And then you have to do it, of course. You have to actually deliver. You have to go there, and you cannot be there working with Stevie Wonder and him thinking like, dude, you don't know what the hell is going on, or what, like you don't know where the kicks should go, or I don't know. You have to continuously be teaching yourself. You have to be learning continuously, and you have to honey your intuition all the time. You have to. Very often I do things and I don't know why I do them the way I do them, but I do them, and it has to do with how much I trust my intuition. It has to do with that. And in order to do that, you have to listen to a lot of music. You have to be able to dissect other people's music and understand why it's good. Even if you don't like that type of music, you need to be able to understand what makes it good for that specific market. But you need to learn that it has nothing to do with your personal taste, but it has to do with you understanding, having empathy even towards the music. Why do they do it that way? And the moment you do that, you start learning it yourself. And the moment they approach you with that type of project, you know what to do. I think it's simpler than what many people think. It's quite simpler. But you need to do it, and you need to do the same as I was talking about having a daily routine, business-wise and professionally. You have to have a routine also in terms of how you nurture your creative interest. How much you listen to other stuff and go like, damn, they did what? And you try to understand it, and you go like, and then you get it.
Yeah, man, that's it's very interesting. Like what, and I learned from you as well. Like have the confidence and the self belief that no matter what, you will keep your head above water and it's gonna be fine. But I think that goes back to where it was what we're saying, and I want to like tie this to the second question, which like we talk about a bit of a routine and systems, but like do you have any key, it's like few key points of what systems and routines you put in place and the thought behind those that someone else that has not your experience or your credits and is maybe a student starting out can start, mirroring in yourself a bit?
Yeah, I think that when we're talking about routines, there is a duality to that thought. One thing, I follow up routines. So when I need to be creative and I'm in the studio, I'm actually doing something creative, I have no routines. I have zero routines. So the routines come in the preparation to it. Okay. The same, for example, if I am to mix something, I prep the tracks or I do whatever needs to be done, or I have somebody do it for me in a way, or even reference tracks. So in a way that when I'm actually working, nothing gets in my way. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to stop and do something that is mechanical or involves mechanical thought, or I don't have to stop by doing that. For example, even if I'm mixing, sometimes I switch from mix to mix. All of a sudden I go like, okay, I'm done with this. It's not finished, but I'm done with this, and I move on to a different mix. And why not? And that's totally anti-routine, right? In terms of the actual work. But I apply the routines and the preparation in order for me to not do it, in the creative side of things. But also sometimes, many other things get in the way. So you cannot pre-plan the day effectively all the time. You plan to do something and it simply doesn't work. You're tracking something and the sound is not clicking and it's not happening. And then you need to know how to be efficient. Because a lot of what we do these days, because of the economics, even before the pandemic hit or anything like that, we need to be efficient. And people call you not just because you are great at what you do. You also need to be efficient. It doesn't matter that you are the best recording engineer in the world if you are a mess and your session takes 16 hours instead of taking 3. And you are costing them, right? So there are many different aspects, that matter.
And that actually crosses through the technical side of things, because I learned this by working with you and being in the studio with you a lot. And for me, your workflow is such a very well refined machine in terms of the technology you use, how you use it, and how it's thought out. Like especially, and just for very very short, I want to touch like the way you set up your different ways of mixing with a bit hybrid, with all analog, different mix buses techniques, and everything is super quick, and it doesn't require a lot of time to browse between mixes, which I've seen you do, and it's
because I try not to have technology get in the way. That's why initially even my system in my studio is pretty complex, but it's complex in order to allow me to have a very non-complex flow when I'm working.
Very like, I think, from thought to action. Very
the way everything is routed, going in the box, outside the box, going in both directions, and so I have multiple possibilities for anything I might want to do. This has to do with also that discipline. We're talking about having routines and setups, things like that apply even if you do everything in the box. Having those available so that when you want to try something creative, you don't have to take a lot of time to try it. You have some, presets already prepped that you can load in and go like, oh, I know this from this session, and I remember, and you have it in a folder with all of your, templates. Go like, okay, let me import this template for crazy distorted vocals with a delay going to this, or I don't know, or this, low end bass, and you import it and you try it, and it might not work, but at least you tried efficiently, you tried quickly, and you move on. It is very important that you try things and you move on.
I in regards to this topic, our friend Dave has a question. I think it's very interesting, which says like preparation of course, super important. How do you prepare for a job? I would imagine a mixing, or recording, or a project.
You prepare at two levels. You prepare obviously technically, in the technical aspect of it, technically, making sure you have all the tools that you're going to require for the job, either be a tracking session or a mix session or whatever it might be, even a vocal session, whatever it might be. Even the silly stupid things. I mean, you're going to be doing a vocal session, make sure that you have the lyrics in a Word document. Even if they tell you, oh, I typed them, I have copies. No, give me the Word document. Make sure. Or if you don't have the Word document, send a PDF and we're going to scan it and put it into a Word document. Why? Because in the middle of the session, if you're going to be making vocal decisions and you need to make notes, or other people need to make notes and need extra copies, you want to have the form of the song. You want to have the structure of the song. And very often people don't type the hook every time it happens, but only type it one time and then it repeats 3 times. And maybe you need to have it,
Yeah.
the way it's being performed.
Yeah.
Silly things like that, prepare for those before you start the sessions. It might only take you 3 minutes, but it might stop the session
Yeah.
for an hour later on if you are not prepared. And then there are these ones, oh, do you know what? Let me change this lyric. And then he's using the Sharpie and crossing. Oh my God, now he can read anything. You're prepared. You can just print a lyric for him. Okay, here's a new lyric. And then you're done. And you never stop the session, right? Preparation is in every little detail. Preparation is even having the right kind of tea for the artist if he's going to be singing. Preparation is in all of the minute, tiny little details. Having the right kind of pop filter ready, even having 2 pop filters if you don't know if you're going to have an issue with that vocalist. All of the little details.
That's great info.
Yeah, and creating the right ambience, knowing that person, and every person is different. For example, I work with people who want to be in the dark, and other people just want the opposite, or they get depressed, they cannot perform. So, and you never know. You have to ask questions and just do it. And then, personally speaking, it has to do with your own mental preparation for it. You have to be ready. You have to be joyful. You have to be you have to be pumped. You need to be. You need to want to be there.
It doesn't come out naturally out of oneself, no? Like, you can't force it, I think.
You have to be your I don't know, you have to root for yourself all the time too. I mean, you have to be your biggest fan, and go like, okay, let's do this and let's do it better than ever before. It's like, yeah.
I love the concept. I have another question from Madrigal. Says, strictly on mixing, mastering nowadays, working online, do you believe there are more opportunities now coming from a small country? How to knock little by little on doors overseas? Can you give any advice?
I think that the biggest the biggest self-promotion comes through results ultimately. Okay, comes through results. You need to really want to upper your game. You need to be never be content with what you have done in the past. Never be happy, completely happy with what you have done in the past, and try to reach a new level and try to see if you really want to get into other styles of music or not. I do all kinds of music, but not everybody wants to do that or should do that. So you have to know yourself, and then your work needs to speak for you. It does really need to speak for you. I'm tired of people, trying to self-promote, and then they show you their reels and their demo reels with the things they have done, and you go like, and they are the ones excusing themselves. No, I know that could be better. It's like, what do you mean it could be better? And you are submitting this reel, and you're already saying this could be better. Are you joking? So it's a matter of self-respect too. Yeah. So all of these things come into play, but your work needs to speak for itself
Yeah.
and represent you. So
I mean, again, like I think it's very interesting. And
and the same methodology, getting out and putting the word out. There has to be a method to it.
yeah,
It's not just a matter of blasting emails to everybody and then forgetting about it. You have to
yeah,
follow up with every single one of those emails that you sent, and not once but twice, until they tell you, don't write, don't write to me anymore. What do you have to lose? What do you have to lose, right?
exactly. I mean, I want to continue a bit in the topic that we were. This is all one topic, which for me as well, like knowing yourself is such a big part of it. And we were chatting as well before, like working towards a goal. How do you set your goals, and how do you keep keep a system in place to make sure that you check up your goals, you follow up your goals, and that you stay in the path, and you kind of measure your success or your goal achievement process?
Yeah, exactly. It's a difference between success. You measure it. You have to measure it yourself. I mean, nobody can tell you you're successful or not because it's a very personal matter, right? You could be doing the top 10 albums, working on the top 10 albums of the year and not feel successful. So, or vice versa, right? Working on the most unknown indie project and really be successful.
Yeah.
So you have to measure yourself. What your true goals are gonna define success. But the way I do it, there are easy targets, right? They are like the easy goals that you're gonna do, you're gonna accomplish, and then there are the unrealistic ones, which have to do with you dreaming of a bigger you. And I think that you have to allow some room for unrealistic dreams. Be ready, obviously, for to being rejected, but you have to allow yourself to have that conversation, and go like, wow, what if? Those what ifs are super important. What if I was the next producer of this artist? I love this. Who can tell you it's not possible? Nobody.
Only yourself, I think.
Only the first barrier you're going to encounter is yourself. It's you. It's you telling in your brain like, are you fucking kidding? You're fooling yourself? You're never going to make it. They're never going to be interested in you. So yeah, you have to allow yourself to dream a little bit. Obviously, not everything you do should be just that single dream. Otherwise, you're going to drain yourself on rejection all the time. But you have to proportionally, go like, okay, these are my realistic, goals. And then here's a little bit of, there is a portion of unrealistic, or nothing is unrealistic for starters, but what your brain could be telling you, this is unrealistic. You're never gonna get a call by such and such, or you're not gonna be able to be part of this project. You're not gonna be able to do that. You're never gonna be able to have this type of company. You're never gonna be able to build gear. You're never gonna be able to build plugins, right? Exactly. It's like everything in life, and then you start doing it, and you fucking do it. So who is to say?
Yeah. I think you fucking do it is the word.
Yeah. I just wanted to add to that. Like, I think it also helps. Like, if you have these unrealistic goals, it helps creating a vision. Because what I always feel is like a lot of people they say like, oh, but I never get opportunities. But I always have the feeling that there's more opportunities than you think. But it's also about knowing which ones to take and which ones not to take. And if you have that vision of like, I want to work with this artist, you know which to accept and which to follow up on and which to maybe not do. So I totally
absolutely, I agree. You start creating your own path to success. You start like without full knowledge really of of how you're going to get there, but you start creating the path. You start creating you start nurturing the right personal environment and perception from other people towards the goal. So you next thing you know, they accept you and you are part of that, what we call unrealistic dream. And also, by exercising this, by doing this exercise all the time, you start perfecting a system so that you get closer and closer to those goals all the time. Even if you don't get them initially, but you start getting closer and closer to them. And eventually you only need one to hit and one of them to say, yes, okay, let's do this together. Let's work on this, in order for the second one, the third one, the fourth one, the fifth one. And then you start like creating the path to a career. You start having some sort of career. Before that, if you never try, if you never dream bigger, you are never going to get closer to that goal. It's going to be, then it's truly unrealistic. Truly unrealistic. There's nothing more unrealistic than people talking about a goal and never taking any action or allowing themselves to dream about it and even formulate business plans about it. Even about this kind of dreams, you need to take it as a business plan. I want to work with this artist. What does the business plan say? What actions do I need to take? What is required for me to be part of that? Why would they take me? What will make me, a candidate to it or not? You have to go through all of these things. And it's good to not just think about them, but to put them on paper eventually. So you structure your ideas much better. You start structuring, how it needs to happen.
I'm loving this, man. I want to go to the next part of the conversation that I had in written, which is
maybe just one more question to follow up on this. This last one from Bruno is kind of in the same line, so maybe.
Okay. What have you done during those in the meantime to get closer to these dreams? What's your focus?
Well, what you do during those times, in between, let's define in between, right? In between means in between projects or in between, I will guess, right?
Yeah.
During in between projects is the golden opportunity for you to learn more things, to be able to formulate plans, to do, to really be prepared for a bigger you, for a bigger projects, bigger things. Once you are actually working, and let's say successfully working, or you are busy, let's say you are in demand, everybody wants to work with you, you are super busy, then you have zero time. You almost have no time. It's just the opposite. You have no time to think much or to learn much about new things. It requires a lot more work to make up the time. Even those 45 minutes that you might need to learn a new technique or a new plugin or this or that, you start lacking that time. So those in between times are super, super important. You should never, you should really take that time, those specific in between times to, to lead and to try new things and to formulate, ideas and to put them on paper, like I was saying, and to do all of this. It's like during this pandemic time, people say like, oh, I have nothing to do. Are you kidding me? Because you lost this project and you have nothing to do. This is the golden opportunity to put all of these ideas on paper and to formulate even collaborations and propose to other people, and they might be even more receptive because they have more times in their hands too, and they might consider it. So yeah, that's what I will do in those in-between times. Right now, we're in one of those in-between times.
Yeah. That was exactly my next question, like about navigating both businesses and personal goals in high and low economic periods, which right now I would say we are in a in a low point.
We're not yet, but we will. But
we're on our way.
but it's also, keep in mind that these times of uncertainty and what's going to come, with obviously there's going to be an economic crisis. We already know that. It's going to actually shaking the system. It's going to shake the system. By shaking the system, it also means that there are new opportunities for the new guys, for new people, right, that are not part of the system yet. So never underestimate how many opportunities are going to come out of this. In terms of the economy, it's going to have repercussions, of course, but in the different tiers of the industry, I will say, number one, people are talking all the time about, okay, this means that I'm going to have to charge half for what they do. Not necessarily. That's not the approach. I will always say, maybe it means that you have to be even a tiny bit more efficient. Like years ago, before 9/11, there have been, by the way, many crises over the years. In '94, after the earthquake hit here in LA, there was a crisis. 9/11, there was a big crisis. 2008, the economic, there was a big crisis. And now we have this one. So cyclically, we have had all of these big crises. It's nothing new, okay? We shouldn't get like all reeled up on the fact that there is going to be a crisis. Of course, there's going to be a crisis. We're not forced. We know that's going to happen. But prepare for it. Prepare the best you can for it. See what you need to learn, what other avenues of revenue there might be, where there might be some new opportunities, but not always thinking by selling your work for cheap. That's not always the key. In terms of your business model as a professional, also when you set your standard of your pricing standard or your value, it's very hard to change it after the fact, change it later. They know you for you being at that price point. So people have to respect you based on quality, not just on price, but they have to respect you in terms of product versus quality versus price. There needs to be some kind of balance, and they have to consider, okay, no, I need to call you. And then learn. I mean, during these times, that's what a lot of people need to do, learn and get into as many, learning opportunities they might find. Spotting, the things that they don't truly master. Put them on paper too. I just had one of these, chats with the students from a college. They are graduating this year. And it was amazing how many people had not written down their weaknesses, and they're ready to go on internships. Okay, sometimes with big guns, big professionals in LA, New York, different cities, and they still haven't written down their weaknesses. In order to be stronger, you need to know your weaknesses.
So true.
And at least, number one, acknowledge them. And after you acknowledge them, decide what you're going to do about it. You might actually go like, fuck it, I'm not going to do anything about that. I'd rather hire somebody if it comes down to that. But you need to be aware of it. You must not be a fool.
Find a team that, like, at least myself, like I with my Leapwing brothers, we're three very different people, and I know that only myself I could not do it, and I think by the sum of the parts that we are very different with certain skills and different weaknesses in different spots. We kind of surround ourselves with a layer of knowledge and the fact that by everyone kind of tapping into everyone's weaknesses, that the weaknesses kind of like level out to like not very critical.
And that's another aspect we haven't talked about, and I think that it is super important to teams, creating teams. This is always a group effort. Success comes with a group effort. It's not just one person. It's not just the artist. It's not just the producer. It's not just the mixer. It's not just the engineer. It's not just the arranger. It's not just anybody. But leadership is very important. If you are the producer of the project, it's important that you behave like a leader and you really show that leadership, and you are able to create a team. Even as an engineer, you have to create your own team. If you have assistants, there's always somebody alongside your effort, and you need to have that team attitude all the time, and you need to be smart about creating your teams and creating teams that actually support the areas where you are not great at.
Yeah.
It is super important.
That's I think that's an interesting topic, because when I started my career, I started to see that a lot of when I have to say, this is just my own experience, but when I started in Spain, it was very difficult for me to get my foot in the door as an intern or whatever, because the overall reaction of everyone towards a guy with no experience that wanted to learn was like, no, don't get into my land, like get out.
You are getting my turf.
My backyard. That was kind of the thing. But then when I actually, I left Spain and went, been to Belgium, in London and New York and now LA. I learned by working with amazing people like yourself that is like, no, come over, that we have to row together,
a team effort is always bigger than yourself. It's always much bigger than yourself, because everybody's got abilities that the other people have, abilities that you don't have yourself.
Yeah.
And people actually help you do things better, and even point out things that you cannot see at the moment, especially on stressful situations. When you're working under a stressful schedule, or you have a crazy deadline, that's when teams are super important, even more important. You don't have the time to reevaluate things, and you need somebody else to tell you, are you sure about that? Or maybe let me help you with that aspect. Let me double check those vocals, or let me see what I can do about that guitar. And just by pointing it out, even if nothing is done about it, at least having that,
like a bounce.
That second opinion about things is super important. And that's what teamwork is all about. Very often, producers call me, other producers, because they want my second opinion on their own work. Not just necessarily my engineering skills or my mixing skills, but it's a combination of many things. They also want that second opinion. They want to know that they are going to have a partner, being super honest about the work. Nobody's going to get offended by anything, any of the comments. And that's also very, very important, to keep a cool head about everything, and be, strip yourself of your ego for a moment, even though what we do is very ego-centered, work, because you need that, because you need to push for your personal opinion on things and your personal take on things. It's super important. And for a moment, you have your big ego, doing things, and because it's creative and it's a very personal journey. But then during specific periods of time, you have to strip yourself of that ego and accept, other people's opinion, and reevaluate things, and then go, okay, do I really think it's true or not? Or you evaluate it and go like, okay, then you do A or B or C. Right. But yeah, I mean, teams to me are essential, are super important.
I totally agree, and I hope people starting out in environments that are not as as nurturing, as some others can with the internet see a bit of like light at the end of the tunnel, because for in my experience growing up in a small place, sometimes there's this like different mindsets that don't align with yours, but yours seems very crazy, but actually it's not. But you start to believe it, and I think it's a dangerous thing. I want to as well get a question from my audience. It's it's a friend of mine from Amsterdam called Jermaine Fleur, and his Rafa, for releasing your songs, do you think it's best to try and work real hard to release it with a label, or do you think nowadays it's perfectly fine and maybe smarter to release it independently? I find it interesting that a lot of Spotify playlists are in hands of the label nowadays, but not sure what's the best way.
I think that you have to release no matter what. That's the reality of things. You cannot just play the waiting game. I would have thought differently years ago, but the market has been changing so quickly, and more than ever, time flies. In terms of creatively speaking, you need to be on the move all the time. You need to be able to keep your fan base, no matter how small it is at the beginning. You need to keep them interested on you. So you need to keep creating and releasing in one way or another. You cannot just be waiting for the big label to
knock your door, no?
to take you under their wing. And then again, even being released under a big label, it might not work, and you might get dropped within a year. Then what? What do you do next? Is it the end of the dream? I always ask these questions to artists. If you were to be signed and you get dropped after the first release because numbers didn't add up and didn't amount too much for them, as a record label, and you get dropped, what will you do? That's a very important question, because you need to know about the resilience of the person you are dealing with, and you have to be prepared to answer this question to a big label too. If they say, like, if we finance your first 2 singles, but then it's not working for us, what will you do? Will you keep working on releases on your own, self-financing? I mean, what's your story? What's going to be your next move? The answer is different for every person, because everybody's got their own priorities, and they prioritize their dreams in a different kind of way, in a different tier in life. But when I'm working with somebody, I need to know that no matter how successful the project is or not, they're going to keep going. There's going to be another release, even if it's independently. Or to me, that's very important.
Yeah, that's a very interesting topic about like trying to find out who this person is and the mindset. Because one thing is to ask, what's your mindset, and someone can tell you, yeah, I'm gonna keep going. But actually, by asking certain questions, being able to see through that mindset, because if someone says like, oh yeah, I'm gonna keep doing it, and it's like, well, if you get dropped, it's like, wow, I don't know. Then you see like things
and obviously it's a very tough question to ask, because it goes against it goes against their own perception of the dream, right? Of their dream, what they think, what they're dreaming of. It's kind of like a one-way alley, but you have to think. You also have to ponder if that person if that dream is strong enough. If they have not only the dream of success, but the dream of having a creative life, of having a creative journey. Is this really what you want to do, even 5 years later with no success, or not economical success? And and we have learned about many stories of people who have been doing this forever, and finally they get to be successful, not necessarily being 19 years old. So the definition of success, again, is very different for very different people. For some people, being successful as an artist will be to be able to perform even if it's in front of 50 people
Yeah.
every weekend for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you take it whichever way you want to take it, but yeah, you have to, yeah,
Very good.
evaluate it that way.
Thank you, Rafa. We are almost over time, so I just wanted to get the last question from the audience. I see Juan Carlos Sotelo has a question. Says, could you give any advice on how to deal with independent musicians that don't understand why investing in engineers is worth it? Technology has made home studios easy, but listening isn't it?
He hit a key point at the end of the question. Um, uh, being an engineer is many things. It has many different meanings, right? In a project, hiring an engineer is not just to get great sounds. It's more about getting the right sounds, not great sounds, but the right sounds. And if they are great too, even much better. And hopefully, if they are the right sounds, they're also going to be great sounds, right?
Yeah.
It's about your engineer is your creative partner or should be your creative partner. It shouldn't be just the guy who sets the mics and goes like, okay, it sounds clean, it sounds loud, it sounds beefy, it has impact. It has to be the guy who also goes like, what does the project need? What is the artist looking for? What is the producer looking for? What's the target here? And then become part of the team and work towards that with their own knowledge and their own miking techniques and evaluation of an acoustic space and knowing his tools, his microphones and his preamps and his whatever he might be using. Being able to create the right environment for the musicians to perform, even if it's just one musician. Yeah. It's important to create the right environment, the right vibe, and the right mindset for everybody involved. So that's an engineer. It's not just a guy who comes in and puts the microphones up and goes like, okay, we're good. Press record. No. Even the guy, an engineer should even be the guy who has an opinion about the right takes, who has an opinion about the minute, creative aspects of things, even about the musical aspects of things, and doesn't get in the way when not needed or not asked. So it is a tough question because I think that these days most musicians, because they are doing it themselves, and many artists are doing it themselves, they don't truly understand and grasp the concept of what it is to be an engineer.
Yeah. Which I guess for some of these artists and
by the way, it's a great investment. It's your best investment.
No, but as well, I think, let me know what you think, but not everyone, you're not fit for everyone, and not everyone is a fit for you.
No, and everybody should be aware of that. It has to do a lot with personality too. It has to do about common goals. If somebody doesn't understand your goal, where the project is going, it's not going to be a good fit for your project, period. And somebody needs to realize, that's the case, and then make a move, okay. And that's how life goes. Not every match, is a fit.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if you have, Rafa, anything else that you want to say or to wrap up the talk, but I think we touch a lot of different and interesting topics that I hope the audience enjoyed it. And I wanted to thank you again for your time. I really, I really appreciate you taking the time and you kind of giving us your mindset, because I think that's one of the things that I hope the audience understands. And it's such a lucky thing to be able to have you here. So thanks again.
No, thank you, guys.
Yes,
And I
thank
would
you.
say, a final point. I think that we need to keep the positive, keep positive. Everybody should stay. These are difficult times, but everybody should stay positive and
And
use,
drink wine.
use your time productively, even if it's learning. There is so much information out there to be learned. There is so much. So I think it's a great time to use the time. It's a great time to use your spare time. Creatively learning and
Yeah.
and working on prospect new projects. Visualizing them.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're gonna wrap this up. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Thank you, Rafa. And well, I hope you guys see you soon, very soon. Okay. Take care.
Thank you, guys.
Adios.
Thank you.